Hi, everyone, and welcome to the DSO Study Club. Sorry you had to wait a couple minutes there, a couple technical difficulties, but we're all ready to go, and we appreciate your patience and spending this Friday afternoon with myself and Dr. Pourhamidi from today's Dental Network. Dr. Pourhamidi is going to share her insights and perspective on cloud adoption and why 2026 is the year for the cloud and probably AI and technology evolution and all sorts of things. So it's going to be an exciting conversation. I'm going to give you some rules of the road as far as what you can expect in the next hour. We are recording this webinar, and it will actually be up on our website, the recording, by the end of today. So, 5 Eastern, you should be able to find it up on Group Dentistry now. It's also on our YouTube channel as well, and or will be. And you will also get a link tomorrow with the recording. And if you want to reach out to learn more, if you have any questions for Dr. Pourhamidi, or if you have any questions for Henry Scheim, who is sponsoring this is going to be more of a panel discussion format. We're going to have some polling. And if you have any questions, even though we got a ton of questions that came in when you registered, and we appreciate that. But if you have any questions that come up during the conversation, just put those either in the chat or the Q&A area, and we will try and get to those. But, with that, I am going to stop sharing the screen a little bit so you can see us. And I would like to introduce you to Dr. Pourhamidi. She is the COO of today's Dental Network, and you're based in Florida?
That's correct.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? I mean, you are a dentist. You've had a lot of different roles, and the latest role is COO. So it's kind of nice to talk to a person in operations that also has the clinical background.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bill. And thanks to everyone that's joining us and everyone that's going to listen to us converse later. As Bill mentioned, Jaleh Pourhamidi, I am an orthodontist by training, but I've spent the vast majority of my professional life in various aspects of leadership in dentistry. I've started a dental school, being the dean of a dental school. I've been a program director for orthodontics. I've been in the DSO space for quite a number of years. Background as 5 years as a VP at PDS. And now I am the Chief Operating Officer for Pacific Dental Services. And a little bit about, for TDN, sorry, old habits. A little bit about TDN. We are a group of highly, I would say, exceptional doctors that came together and started a DSO. So about a mid-sized DSO at this point with 35 locations, all in Florida. And what Bill mentioned, the role not being so common for a clinician is absolutely true. But I am so glad that I have the dental background and not just the business acumen to do what I do. And I jokingly say that being a clinician is my superpower in my role. It allows me to better understand the daily lives of those folks, the boots on the ground, be it the doctors or the staff, the pain they go through, some of their challenges, some of the obstacles, so that when I communicate with the team, I can better find a solution for them, one that is not just business minded, but also dentistry and patient care minded as well. So thank you for allowing me to speak with you guys.
Yeah, and all the locations are in Florida. And what is the practice count? It was around 35 locations.
35, correct. And it's a mixture of specialty and general dentistry and
Okay.
all specialties.
All specialties. So we have ortho, which is your background, and you've got endo, everything.
Everything.
Okay. And how does that work? Do you have specialists that kind of rotate around like a certain number of offices, or do you actually have specific specialty offices?
There are specific specialty offices that decided to partner with TDN. For example, um, our oral surgery practices. We now have, I believe, 6. And our newest market has been in the Jacksonville area. And we're looking at other areas of Florida as well, but initially concentrated in Sarasota. And we've partnered with some great practices in the Tampa area and venturing a little bit more East Florida at the current time too.
Gotcha. So you're pretty spread out around the state. I mean, if you're all the way up in Jacksonville, you're based in Tampa, Sarasota. You've got some southeast as well. I think I saw on the map. So you're
Correct.
that's great. Well, we're going to talk a lot about practice management solutions. We're going to talk about the cloud today. Thank you, Henry
Mhm.
Shine One, by the way, for sponsoring this. Without you, we wouldn't be able to have this great conversation. I think we're going to start things off. Well, actually, why don't we start things off with a poll? Because that's always fun.
Great.
So we've got 4 poll questions. They're all super easy. Anybody can answer them. So no excuses for not participating. The first one really is we just kind of want to get an idea for who's actually on this webinar. So just feel free to let us know how many locations you have. Are you a solo practitioner? Do you have 2 to 5? And we'll just give you a couple more minutes. I can see that our percentage is going up. I'll give you like 15 more seconds. And we have to add one more for the 35 locations for today's dental
There
network.
you go.
So we'll have that in here. Okay. Looks like we've got some answers here. So we're going to end the poll and then I'm going to share the results. So it looks like the majority are 2 to 5 locations. We have some solos and a couple of larger groups as well. So thanks for that. That gives us a real good idea of who we're speaking to. And Dr. Pourhamidi can really, you can kind of tailor that to, I would say, doctor-owned, doctor-led groups with a couple maybe that are a little bit larger.
Mhm. Great.
Okay. So from a decision-making perspective, I'm going to start at the beginning, right? Um, were you using a different PMS software and did the organization get to a point where you felt like you needed to make a change or what kind of sparked this move to the cloud?
There were a number of factors. So one, given the composition of this DSO, it wasn't one PMS system that we were considering to transition. There were many. And those in specialty can actually appreciate that maybe even a little bit more because each specialty has their own practice management system guru. And then there are multiple legacy systems with GP. So as we partnered with the doctors, the complexity grew. And that's what I want to hone in on and talk about because it's a lot of times it's not for us, it wasn't a technology decision. It was an operational decision. And for those in the smaller DSOs or the individual practices, that's where I would start in evaluating, does your system currently meet your needs? And if it doesn't, then that tells you then maybe it's time to look elsewhere for what you're doing. So for us, it was a couple of factors that came together as we were growing. One was what we call operational drag, right? There was reporting lag. We couldn't make real-time decisions because we couldn't get the data we wanted. There were operational inefficiencies with the on-prem system because we couldn't access the data we wanted. We wanted, you have a doctor that's has an emergency patient, and to be able to access that in a safe and secure way wherever he or she is and have communication with the patient, that's really valuable. So as we grew and as we partnered with additional practices, every complexity was just multiplied. And it wasn't one or two times, it was uh, by tenfold as we kept going. So that was a big part of it. we talk about data governance and data consistency. That was a massive thing for me as an operator. We live in data. We live and breathe by data. And that's how we evaluate the success of a practice a lot of times, in addition to patient care, is based on that. And I couldn't get the same data for every practice. And again, the difficulty became exponential. I'll give you a simple example: patient conversion, right? What patient conversion meant in one system was different in another system. And I couldn't look at the metrics across the board, across the organization, and understand where we stand at the time with even the most basic metrics. A big challenge we were having, and we talked about reporting, was visibility into data. I wanted to look at data in real time. I wanted to understand where every practice stood so we could react in real time. And that just wasn't possible anymore with our on-prem systems. And then a big factor was risk. And when we talk about risk, think about your non-cloud on-prem systems and how dependent you are on functionality of a machine, of hardware, in addition to the software. And being in Florida, we are quite often faced with some natural disasters. And what we learned was it was truly disastrous for our teams to function when a system was down, and they had no other access to what they were getting. Cybersecurity, one point of failure risk, and varied site to site. So we couldn't plan across the company for what we were facing with risk. So all these three items really came together when we decided that it's time to switch to cloud.
And so your situation was that you had how many different PMS softwares did you have? Because you had specialty going, right? And so that's kind of its own animal, right? And then you've got the general practices that probably are running on different systems. So how many did you have before you made your switch?
Say 8 plus.
Yeah. Wow.
Impossible to manage and grow. And again, this isn't just for growth through acquisition. This is for growth of an individual practice as well. Uh, some of these systems don't allow for proper planning because you can't get the data that you need consistently.
Yeah. So you've got the 8 plus different systems, operating differently and different, data. You talked about
Mm-hmm.
that from patient conversion standpoint. It meant something different to each different software. Um, what did the evaluation process look like? So you're like, okay, we need to make a change. We need to be on one system.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big undertaking, and you know that inevitably somebody's not going to like the change because it's not going to be what they're used to in a lot of cases.
Mm-hmm.
So, but maybe take us through that evaluation process.
Certainly. First of all, let me say this is not a Moscow Mule. It's not 5 o'clock where I am, although it's someplace. It's just coffee. So wanted to make sure you guys didn't think I was drinking on the job. But the evaluation process, I think, actually quite fascinating. And I think sometimes we do it, in my opinion, backwards. Um, a lot of times when we're looking to switch, we start talking to vendors, we start seeing what bells and whistles they have without keeping in mind what we need. So I would recommend working backwards. Set your platform, what you want it to look like. Set that in place. Have a plan in writing. This is what I want it to look like. These are my must-haves, and these are my nice-to-haves. That way, you don't get distracted by all these different companies on all these different systems that come in and use bells and whistles a lot of times as distraction, and you're missing out on the absolute needs of your company. So that's my probably biggest call out as you're doing your evaluation. But for me, uh, as I look at, and again, these are some of the non-negotiables. Um, Operations readiness, right? So multiple practices. One of the main items for us was, can this platform support multiple practices, multiple specialties, and how do we go about doing that? One of the big things that drags us down is inefficiency in a dental practice. So, and we know change is hard. Change management is a big pain point in dentistry, but being very, very clear with long-term and short-term, does adding this specific practice management system or what I need in return for what I'm seeing, does it add or reduce consistencies, efficiencies? Really, really important to think about. And is this something that your team, be it your corporate team, be it your management team at the office, doctors, individuals, is this something that everybody can use and can use well and can get behind? A lot of times we focus on, and it's hard not to. Again, as a clinician, if I'm evaluating something, I'm thinking about my needs. What do I need as a doctor for this system to do? And you have to evaluate the entire team. What does an office manager need to see versus a hygienist versus a team member? And then, of course, finance, right? My finance team needs to be able to see everything and have confidence in the data we're getting, and my operational team as well. Security was another one that's massive. Um, what protection does one system provide to my DSO versus another one? We would be foolish given all the cyber attacks and everything else we're facing every day if we didn't consider that. And then change management, getting into the weeds of what exactly are we talking about? What is the timing? What is the downtime? Getting realistic. And this is where I'd say a really good vendor partnership is important here, because I've worked with other vendors, and uh, we've all heard a lot of promises, and then the reality sometimes isn't there. So having uh, brutally honest conversations with your partners, addressing your needs versus they bring to the table, and how you're going to work together as you move forward through this transition was a significant factor. And for me, additionally, I like to have a relevant and big player in the market that I can rely on and understand that whatever new features they might add on are going to be those that significantly enhance the dentistry we do and the patient care we provide.
Yeah, some great points. I mean, it's probably one of the biggest decisions you'll make in a dental practice is
Mm-hmm.
changing. Well, in this case, you really didn't have much of a choice because you had eight different. Well, I guess I should say there are probably a lot of groups out there that are using multiple PMS
Mm-hmm.
softwares right now. But as you get to scale, or you are anticipating scaling up, it just compounds that problem. You talked about that earlier, how it just becomes a multiple of challenges. And for somebody in operations that is looking for data, consistent data across all locations, I can only imagine. Here's a question that just came in. Um, how long did it take you from needs analysis, right? So you said that was kind of like the first thing, the must-haves, needs analysis to vendor selection. What was that time frame?
It actually was quite a few months. It was about, I would say, 6 months to make sure, again, doing your needs analysis. And that's probably the biggest piece of it, because you have to talk to different stakeholders. You have to make sure you take that into account. A lot of times people think of this as a decision by IT and maybe a couple of the leadership people eh, on your team. And that's actually not. It has to be an operations led. IT is, doing the heavy lifting in a background and making sure everything goes off without a hitch. But unless you have operator buy-in to what one system can provide versus another one, this wouldn't go anywhere. So doctors, teams, again, finance, and myself and my team, we all had to be on the same page when we were evaluating different systems. And we knew that this was a big decision. You can't, this is not something you want to do a couple of times and switch again. You really get one chance to do it and do it right. So we wanted to do our due diligence. We talked to some of the other customers and felt very comfortable at the end that this was a solution that was going to meet our needs.
So we got into the evaluation process topic because I want to talk a little bit more about that. But I've got another poll question here. We want to get an idea of where you are as an attendee on your cloud PMS journey. So, real quick question here, and we'll get an idea for where everybody's at. So, tell us about where you are in your cloud PMS journey. Okay, here we go. So I get to see the bars go up and down. So it's kind of fun. Give everybody another, I don't know, 15 seconds to answer, and then we will go from there. Okay. All right. Here are our results. So it looks like we've got the bulk are planning to migrate within the next 12 months.
Hmm,
Okay. So
great.
you talked about a 6 month evaluation process, right? So this
All within, yep, within range.
we have a couple that we actually have one that has full cloud base already. We've got hybrid, which is not uncommon, and then actively evaluating, and the most are planning to migrate. Great. All right. Thank you all for sharing, and we will
So
head back.
let
Yes.
me let me double click on that. So those that are thinking about doing it, um, don't let decision fatigue stop you from pulling the trigger, because I know it can be a daunting task because you don't want to have buyer's remorse and you want to move forward. But especially for practices that or DSOs that are hoping for growth, the more you grow, the more complex the entire process gets. So don't be distracted by, again, different, and I get it, because with everything I evaluate, be AI, being anything else, there's so much great stuff out there right now that you have to look at some of the basics first and then move forward with some of the nice to haves, as I said earlier. But don't become too complex before, or too big before you pull the trigger on cloud, is my recommendation, because it just gets more difficult.
Well, you make a really good point as a COO. I think a lot of in a lot of the doctor-owned groups, there's an overwhelming amount of you kind of call it bells and whistles, right? A lot of technology, a lot of AI solutions out
Mhm.
there, and I think it's great advice to start with the basics. The basics being having one PMS platform. Cloud seems to be the solution. I don't think people aren't leaving cloud and going the other way. So I think you're right, starting with the basics and then kind of moving from there. And then a lot of times these PMS softwares have some of these technologies built into them, or they
Mhm.
have APIs, or they communicate well together. But you're right. Start with the basics. So let's talk about that evaluation process a little bit more, if you don't mind.
Sure.
You talked about taking about 6 months. You're
Mhm.
talking to really kind of involving all of the stakeholders, being the clinicians, finance, operations, clinicians being doctors, both specialty GP, hygienists, anybody that's really touching or having to deal with PMS, which is And you probably had a lot of different opinions based on what they were used to using and what they were
Mhm.
comfortable with. So maybe talk a little bit about that because I'm sure you had advocates for platforms that you inevitably didn't choose. So how did that all work?
That's, I think, the most difficult part of leadership in a lot of cases. And the more opinions you ask, you're going to get more opinions, and you want buy-in for sure. But again, going back to that decision fatigue, uh, and a lot of it is just, for example, that as an orthodontist, there are various PMS systems that orthodontists are just used to, and that's where their comfort level is. It's important to relay the message to a group, especially on a DSO level, that this isn't to discount anybody's opinion, but we have to make one decision, and that's what's best for the entire company. But also to not build something or not choose something for now or where we have been, but to choose something for where we're going. And I think that's a key piece of the equation, to keep that in mind and to work with the leadership at not just clinical leadership as well, to help them understand the common goal of the company, and that includes all the doctor partners as well.
So moving from evaluation to the timing and
Mm-hmm.
rollout. So you've determined that you're going to use, is it, it's Dentrix, right? So is it Dentrix? And what did you ultimately decide on?
It was Dentrix Ascend, correct.
Dentrix Ascend. So after your 6 months, you decide on that.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have to talk about the rollout.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you do that? Is it phased? Do you roll it out to X number of practices? And if so, like who do you choose, which practices, and what does that all look like?
So this is where it gets a little bit complicated, right? Because there are a number of different ways to go about this, and you can fail very quickly, or you can have success, in my opinion, by a phased rollout. And that's what we decide to. So one of the main things is, again, as a mid-sized DSO, we are very, very lean on our team, on our corporate team level. Uh, Pulling the trigger on all practices at the same time, it would have put a lot of burden on our team, our operations team, our IT team, on those individuals that had to act as support. Uh, and the learning wouldn't have allowed us to move faster for the next ones. The other big thing, and I recommend this for everyone as you choose how to phase out, is to choose your initial pilot practices very, very carefully and very smartly. So for us, again, we decided that a phased rollout was going to be the best approach. And given the complexity of the company, given complexity of the different specialties, and the simple adage of, how do you bite an elephant? One bite at a time. And we mapped out a process where we identified a couple of the practices. And my recommendation is, and we all know this, for the initial rollout, for your alpha, or for your trial, pick practices that are great partners and great champions for change within the company. Because again, if this fails and you're getting the negativity, your next set of rollout is going to be much more difficult. That was, I think, key. Identifying which practices. So when we talk about leadership at the practice, not just the doctor leadership, but also operations leadership, your OM, an office that has a great culture to begin with and embraces change openly and rapidly because they see the bigger picture. Uh, we see this in dentistry, we see this everywhere. There's a lot of anxiety around change. I don't like change. I'm probably using an old iPhone just because I don't want to go through the, you know, learning of new settings and all that stuff. But change doesn't come from, it's not simply that we don't like change. It's anxiety based about what I don't know, what I'm going to face. So we've had practices that are ready and open, and we've piloted a lot of things with them. And they've trusted us. We've built, and again, that trust is a main factor. We've built that trust. So when we go to them with, hey guys, let's try this, um, be it technology, be it, you know, uh, clinical technology using AI or 3D printing, they're ready to go because they've trusted us and they've seen success. So picking out your first group and being very, very selective is massive. Uh, Understanding also what it entails. So, not underestimating the change that this will cause, but being very open and honest with the team about what pain points they're going to be, what that rollout is going to look like, the timeline, and expectations that are very, very clear. And this is where your partner comes in your vendor relationship management. I'd much rather have radical transparency than getting the team to buy into something and then have it not happen. So working with them, working with the trainers, understanding the needs and the goals, and maybe tailoring that to this group of people versus another group of people. But the doctor leadership, massive, absolutely massive. And that phasing it and piloting it then allowed us to go back and evaluate everything. And I think that's the biggest reason we do this. How did the training go? How did conversion go? What about accuracy on reporting? Uh, Duplicating patients, right? Or new patient count. What are we seeing when we convert? Am I doubling my new patient count because the true patient count? Because the conversion is taking actual patients that were converted from old system to new system as new patients in addition to my. So all of these things need to be worked out so that you get greater trust in the system. And what this does is create cheerleaders for you, right? And as you keep going, the number of your cheerleaders outnumber the number of naysayers. And I can tell you, for example, last year, I believe we did 6 because it is a time consuming process and it's a process that has to be very, very methodical. This year we're doing 5. And the conversations have, I mean, I see the evolution from more people resistant to it than more people saying, okay, what I'm hearing now that the conversion wasn't as bad. And while I really like my system and I know where everything is, maybe I not as opposed to it. So building that camp is really, really important as you go on. And maybe tailoring each rollout a little bit more specifically. And this allows you to do that because you take your learnings and you decide for this type of individuals based on what we see with their engagement. Are they positive usually on change, negative on change? Who do we need to work with most? Is it the doctor? Is it the OM? And how can we bring them to a comfortable level where they see the need for change, but also maybe even more importantly, how they're, what's in it for me, right? How can we help them become more efficient? Whereas their initial thinking is, this is going to make me less efficient because I don't know where everything is. And I've always done it this way, and I want to keep doing it that way. And I don't see what I want to see. So helping them understand the inefficiencies, maybe operational inefficiencies that the current system has, and influencing them to understand that while this is different, it is going to make you much more efficient and comfortable with what you're doing. And you're going to be able to see more accurate numbers and results. And your workday is going to go so much more smoothly because of those factors.
So I think we could probably spend an hour on
We
timing and
could.
rollout because it's fascinating. So I just want to make sure that we don't just leave it at this because there are a couple of questions that I have. So When you did your initial rollout,
Mhm.
was it a single location? Was it three or four locations? And then how long did it take before you were satisfied and they were satisfied that, they're comfortable, trained, and then you moved on to the next batch of practices? And then, so that's one question. And then was there communication between first group that was piloting and the second that was, the second of the rollout?
Yeah, definitely one at a time was our approach to make sure we do it right. We engage the resources that we needed to engage. And it can be a little bit labor intensive on the IT side if we were to do it right and if we were to do it in a very methodical way. And we wanted our first one we wanted to give it enough time and make sure that we had everything figured out. And then from that point on, take the learnings and start the other ones. So a true phased out approach.
Got it.
And I feel like now we have a really good system. I mean, there's no way you can expect that your first one. Um, how, for example, patient care, right? What do we need to do? Is this a button you press and everything goes smoothly from one to another? Clearly not, right? But how do we minimize disruption to the clinic and to patient care? Because obviously that's our first priority is serving the patients that we serve that come to us. But so minimizing that while maximizing the training that is needed, the feedback that is required, making sure everybody feels comfortable, and the 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 rollout and the training doesn't stop at go live, but you should feel very, very comfortable with that at go live. And that was another learning in, for example, how many patients do you schedule? So let's say you do your training day 1 and 2, full on, full schedule, in ortho, for example, 100 patients, and whatever the case may be for your specialty or GP. And what we learned was that maybe wasn't the best approach because the retention factor and the repetition factor. So that's where the team comes in, and that's why being on site is super helpful to make sure that uh, those anxieties are relieved, and we make time for them. We allow for that rollout to happen, for that go live. And then again, having a great partnership with your vendor to make sure that the trainers are aware of some of the issues that we faced in another rollout, and we tailor the training, we tailor the timeline and our approach as we move forward. um, I couldn't work with a stagnant vendor partner that was not willing to do that, uh, and adjust things for us. Again, we're a mid-sized DSO. We're not one of the big dogs. So making sure that I get the same resources and attention was really important to me.
So let's talk about change management. You mentioned it earlier. What do you think the biggest challenge was for you in regards to change management during this transition?
It was the anxiety. It was the anxiety of unknown and the resistance to change. And understanding that, again, being very transparent about what to expect. Um, People don't like loss of speed, loss of control, loss of agency, and a lot of times they equate a change like this, especially to a company-wide system or a cloud system, to I will no longer be able to do the things that I worked 20 years to set up just the way I like, right? That is the biggest change. So making sure this was not viewed as an IT decision. This was not something, well, that makes the people on the corporate side, it makes their life easier while creating more of a situation for you to clean up afterwards. Getting buy-in from them that this is an operational efficiency platform, And I think that's really, really important. Again, I come in with that as a clinician and understanding the anxiety a lot of times the doctors and the team members have, and training them and educating them on what to expect and why this is a good thing. The other thing that's really worked out for us, and we started doing this a while ago, we started using a champion and a cheerleader at the company. So individuals that have gone through the training successfully, and maybe they were the naysayers uh, against the platform at the very beginning, and talking to them a month later and them saying, oh, I don't even remember what we were doing before, and that didn't make any sense, and it was so inefficient. That is so powerful. So as we move forward with these rollouts, the process is becoming more and more simplistic in a way, just because we actually have people that are boots on the ground that have gone through it. A lot of times we can pull them in and say, this is the person that's going to be on site for you. And no, this isn't something that's a trainer from the vendor we've chosen. This is one of your peers who really struggled and now on her own or on his own has figured out the way this has become so much more efficient for the system. Those are the things. And again, being clear with them is about consistency. It's about uh, understanding real-time data and being able to manage the practice better, make real-time decisions, and acknowledging that, yeah, this is going to be a little bit challenging, but talk to your peers, talk to individuals that have gone through it, and how much more efficient they feel now that they've gone through. They're a couple of weeks out than what their life was prior to the system.
So you mentioned it earlier. Let's take the topic of risk and security, and I would
Mhm.
say even include reliability in that because
Sure.
we've got cybersecurity, which I think a lot of people it's front and
Mhm.
center now. We hear about cyber breaches. Seems like on the daily almost now that there's some healthcare system, there's patient data that gets out there. So, there's that security, there's the operational risk. And but then there's also reliability. Like, is there going to be downtime that I might experience? So, just
Mhm.
talk a little bit about some of those considerations when you were making, your decision and what your thoughts are now.
One of the big things when we talk about cybersecurity and risk is the risk of an on-prem hardware and software versus cloud. Living in Florida, there are a lot of hurricanes and potential disasters that happen, and that's the case everywhere, I think. So the local systems where when you talk about that, when you really think about that, being prone to risk, I mean, that's a significant factor, right? It's a There is no redundancy in the data, and in order to get that redundancy, sometimes it's very cost effective, and it's very time and resource consuming, versus cloud has different layers of backup, and the same with cybersecurity and protection. So this is something I would tell everyone in the market to really evaluate and feel comfortable. It should be an automatic for every system out there, but you have to also do your own diligence. And we felt like with the partner we chose, there were multiple layers of security. Um, and then reducing human error is another thing that I feel much more comfortable with now, uh, with the cloud system versus on-prem. So definitely a factor to consider. And this is where, you know, the vendor we obviously Henry Schein, the Dentrix Ascend, was a significant consideration. And working with a platform, with large platforms such as this, I felt very comfortable in understanding that they've done their due diligence to make sure we minimize risk at every step.
Question regarding what you just said, Dr. Pourhamidi, which was how does a cloud system help reduce human error, do you think?
The A lot of checks and balances in the background, and this is something that on-prem systems do not have. They're much more simplistic in a lot of ways. Um, somebody, I mean, I hate to say this, but if you have an on-prem hardware and a system, breaking into that a lot of times is much easier, right? So things need to be locked down, things need to be secured appropriately versus that doesn't happen. That does usually isn't a concern. I mean, there's certain things you have to do. Of course, we always do. I don't leave my computer in a bag when I go to Starbucks like I used to. So I'm much more careful about not about my the data I store on my computer. But uh, it's much more secure with cloud because of the different layers of protection.
I've got another poll question here. So this is for, again, all the attendees here. What do you feel is your biggest operational or technology challenge right now? So I've got a couple of options. Is it data security, right? Do you have too many systems and vendors? I've heard that one before many times. Um, Kind of to your point, one of the reasons that you made the change was the limited visibility across all the locations, right? Different reporting that comes back, um, IT costs,
Mm-hmm.
supporting growth and scalability. So there's a lot of, I mean, and there's probably multiple things that you could check here, but you can only choose one. So we'll just get a couple more responses and then we'll kind of share this. This one looks pretty evenly split. All right, we'll do this because we've got about 10 minutes and I want to make sure we get to some of those questions. So it looks like we were split across supporting growth and scalability, limited visibility, and data security and compliance. So thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Let's move on to some of the questions. Like I said, we've got about 10 minutes left. So I wanted to get to some of the questions that came in from attendees. This is one that, as we were going over it, I know you chose this one, Dr. Pourhamidi. So, how to successfully prepare the teams for transition. So, what was there a plan in place? Did you have, I guess you were talking to a lot of these practices, a lot of stakeholders, so they already knew that something was in the air, that you were going to make a change. But, what did the preparation look like from having that conversation that you're exploring a cloud solution to preparing them for we've made the decision, now we've got to change.
Yeah, we have every company has some holdouts, right? Where eh, they're late adopters. They want to make sure that whatever we're doing works for everybody else. And even then, okay, maybe I see that it works for everybody else, but I'm different. My practice is different. My software is different. My staff is used to this. So in the rollout and in the communication, my approach is let's show them success, right? Let's not force them into pulling the trigger and ripping off the band-aid, because if there is no leadership support behind it, not just from the executive side, but doctor leadership and office manager leadership. So the communications have to keep happening. And I urge, in our case, the partners to speak to each other and share with each other their experience. Not immediately, because immediately post change, we're not used to things and it looks different, it feels different, and why do I have to do this? But once they give it some time for the system to work for them and for them to understand some of the efficiencies and the reasons, we continue to communicate with them and use leadership from the doctor partners to help them understand, and with the OMs as well. They can be tough to convince a lot of times because they run busy practices. So it's going to come from communication. And then Once we get buy-in from the clinician and maybe reluctantly, maybe not, they are ready to go, the planning process is about a 6 week process. So 6 weeks, so you got to work backwards. This is going to be our go live, and we're going to kick things off. And it depends on your timeline, right? Or how complex the practice is, how big it is. I can tell you some of the practices where we've thought we were going to have a difficult time executing and getting to go live in a timely manner have been the greatest ones to partner with because they get it, they understand it, they're on board, and the communications prior to have been very, very valuable. So, from helping them understand what this looks like, from multiple communications about what will change, what will not change, how their daily activities in a system will look, all the way to the weekly check-ins. The Henry Schein has a great. There's a Ascend University, right? It has a lot of videos and a lot of information. So getting the team access to that and urging them every week to or assigning videos about, hey, take a look at this. I think this will alleviate some pain or ease your concerns. Taking that step by step process. And again, culture and leadership, engaging with the leaders often, understanding what their pain points are as we go through. And right before maybe live training and kickoff, doing a couple of trials with them so that they understand really it's not that scary before we go live. This is going to be okay. We're going to show you what it looks like. We can test accuracy in two systems and get the team to feel comfortable so that when go live happens, everybody is at a much better place. And again, getting a champion or getting a cheerleader, if possible, on the ground, on site, to help them work through some of the challenges they had when they were going through the rollout.
Talk a little bit more about the training. So you talked about the university online, but what is that? I mean, do you have any people that come in to the practice and help train? What does the process look like? Is it in person first? Is it a combination of video or online and then in person?
It's video and online and exposure as much as possible. And then the 2 day live training. This is how we do it. And everybody can tailor it again, depending on the size of the practice and the complexity of it. We have online trainers and IT and a couple of internal, again, champions that are on site to help with the transition. And that has been so you have internal people, external trainers who now have worked with us and understand some of our challenges. We've worked through a lot of the potential roadblocks, and we have our team on site to make sure that everybody feels comfortable. And then we go through the go live again at 50% patient volume. That's been really, really helpful. And then we unleash and have 2 days of full engagement. And we continuously check in with them. This isn't where, we pull the trigger and walk away. Our team knows to be hands on with any other issues um, to make sure that, again, a lot of this comes to trust, right? If that first week doesn't go well and they can't get the answers they want, they can't get the solutions they want, then it just keeps building. So getting in front of that and building comfort and trust ahead of time prior to go live is the most important thing.
As you can see, I pulled up the slide here. We've got about 3 minutes left, but if anybody wants to reach out and talk to Dr. Pourhamidi or email her if you have any questions, her email address is up here, and we'll put that actually in that reminder email that we send out tomorrow with the link to the video recording of this. You can also scan to reach out to Henry Schein. We'll have the URL in that email we send out tomorrow if you want to get a demo or learn any more. Like I said, we've got about 3 minutes left. I had one more question here, and then I'll kind of let you finish things up, Dr. Pourhamidi. Thank you so much. This has been great. I think unfortunately we probably used 2 hours minimum, but we dug in pretty well today. There was another question that came in that was really about, what cloud adoption mistakes do dental practices, maybe you've made them at today's dental network, do dental practices make that end up increasing costs or inefficiencies rather than reducing them? Have you had a couple of missteps, or were you warned of any that could potentially happen?
Absolutely. Not having this 6 week period, not having a road plan, a roadmap, a plan for rollout. It can really, I mean, again, you get one chance at this, right, with a practice. So making sure, and then having champions on the ground working side by side, the communication piece. And I'm going to, when we were talking about cybersecurity and risk, uh, one of the things we learned, and I think this is an important one, was that because this is a cloud-based system, one of the biggest risks you have, one of our learnings was we all went through the whole Verizon uh, blackout a couple of days ago, right? And those things happen with internet companies, with I constantly have a blackout somewhere, and it really freezes you. So one of our learnings has been having two internet connections at every office, so that in case that happens, cloud isn't failing you. And the team isn't going, what the heck, this is not working, and I'm so dependent on cloud. Again, emergencies happen, and um, things happen, but trying to prepare for it based on every step, every learning has been significant for us.
Excellent. Well, final thoughts. You have about a minute. So, anything else you'd like the audience to know about your experience before we let everybody get on with their Friday afternoon?
Absolutely. So, real quick, thank you guys all for being here. We look ahead at 2026. I think 2025 was not a kind year for dentistry. There were a lot of challenges, I think, macroeconomics, microeconomics, wherever you may be. But 2026, I'm hopeful for. As you mentioned at the very beginning, technology is going to, I think, outpace our attention span, and AI and everything else we have coming at us. And I think it's important to stay focused and think about your actual needs. I've said this before, and I'm going to keep saying this because it is enticing and exciting to keep hearing all the different things. So don't get sidetracked. Look at your needs, your actual needs, and then build out from there. And please reach out to me. Anyone that I geek out over this stuff. So anything you want to talk about, I'm more than happy to share our background or put you in touch with someone if I don't know the answer at the company that does. And Bill and the rest of the team, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, this has been great. Again, thanks for your time, Dr. Pourhamidi. This
My pleasure.
great insight. I wish we had a little bit more time because there is so much to discuss. It's a huge decision, probably one of the biggest. And like you said, you really do only get one chance. If you're going to try and do it again, goodness, that's going to be difficult. So you don't want to have to do that. And thank you, Henry Schein for sponsoring this. And again, we're going to send out a follow-up email to everybody tomorrow. You'll have a link to the recording of this. And then also, if you want to contact the doctor, or if you want to contact Henry Schein, you'll be able to do that. So everybody, have a great Friday afternoon and have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you all. Cheers.